Before Steve Millington left the building, I had to share a story with him off air, and I can share some of it with you on air this morning. It it made me uh, just sometimes you when you wonder, if God has abandoned us or not. That maybe every once in a while, for fun, he just gets. I was at a Bible study one time, and I remember the preacher was telling us. He said, God has a great sense of humor. He made the wheels fall off Pharaoh's chariots. And I remember that line, and every once in a while you see something and you say, you wonder if there's a divine hand in something here, because the humor points out an even bigger message. And I'm talking about something that happened over at MSDNC the other day. Now, Hillary Clinton gave her speech last week where she denounced Donald Trump as being a racist and a member of the alt-right, whatever that happens to be, speaking of Christianity. I was at home over the weekend and I saw some guy, these people now broadcast live on Facebook. I do it as well. And I saw a message come up, so and so is broadcasting live, and the subject line said, alt-right and Christianity. Well, the alt-right, whatever it is not necessarily racist. There might be some people who are racist in every political organization you come across, but this guy considers himself alt-right because of his Christian views. And what he was doing is he was praying live over Facebook. I thought that was pretty cool. But Hillary Clinton gave this speech, and what that speech signaled was, all right, my minions in media, it's time for you to go attack Donald Trump on this. You will follow me. You are under my power. And of course, that's exactly how they reacted. They immediately went out and all said, Donald Trump's a racist. Hillary says it. It must be true. So Alex Witt, who's an anchor she's now one of the opinion talkers normally, but she's a news anchor at MSDNC. She was appearing with a black guest who was there to beat up on Donald Trump and second what Hillary Clinton had said. So they were going to call Trump a racist, and then Alex Witt said, well, I'd like to introduce a soundbite of what Hillary Clinton said, so they could all go, oh, wonderful words, inspiring speech, yes. But take a listen to what actually happened when they got to the soundbite.
I want to listen to part of her speech with you and then get your reaction. So here it is.
Sure. I am the extra crispy Colonel, and my extra crispy $5 fill-up is a tasty.
Absolutely not. We were going to play, but let me just talk where apparently the word was from Hillary Clinton that a fringe element has effectively taken over the Republican Party. The paranoid fringe now calls itself alt-right.
So you may not have heard that clearly, but instead of a soundbite with Hillary Clinton, the video starts to roll, and there's a guy playing Colonel Sanders with a bucket of chicken. He's sitting on a beach eating fried chicken. Get it? Divine providence sneaking into MSNBC studios. 10 minutes after 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. The Democrats, of course, have dragged Jesse Jackson out of formaldehyde, brought him out to denounce Trump, too, as being a racist. This is actually from Jackson's Rainbow Coalition. This is a program and award ceremony in 1999. And listen to Jesse congratulating one of the guests for being a great friend of the black community.
I do want to express thanks to you, Donald Trump, for being with us tonight. We need your building skills, your gusto, your rent package for people on Wall Street who represent diversity. And we thank you for coming tonight. Let's give Donald Trump a big hand.
Wow. Jesse Jackson honoring Donald Trump at a Rainbow Coalition event in 1999. Today, Jesse Jackson is calling Donald Trump a racist. Meanwhile, those polls that said Donald Trump was toast, he was cooked, it was all over with, and all of you Republicans could stay home, those polls have narrowed significantly in the last few days. Trump has closed that gap by about half in just about a week. And, of course, the email situation behind Hillary Clinton keeps dragging behind her, and it appears that she can't clean that message up or that mess up. You can reach our program today if you'd like to chat with me by calling 736-0300. That's 736-0300. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. A bit more on this subject. I've been trying to find people out there who might actually, well, how can I put it this way? They might actually be willing to say, you know what, those never Trump people, their basis of all of this is Trump can't win. Well, what if he's suddenly bouncing back in the polls and ever so steadily and gradually doing it, and he's whittling away at her lead? Will we start to see some movement with the never Trump people, and they start saying, you know what, better never Hillary? 63 right now. It's 9:12. You're on the air with Bill Colley on KLIX.
Bill, swarms of media endlessly covered the deaths of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, two young men that did nothing good. Last night, I surfed the TV stations to see how they covered the funerals of the nuns who suffered painful, horrible deaths. A person shot in the head usually dies instantly. The nurse nuns stabbed probably suffered terrible pain before they died. I wanted to see the people who turned out for their funerals, but there was no media coverage, not even a message from the White House.
Of course not. I thank you much for the telephone call, because for that poor killer, I just had to do it because he was raised in poverty. And there was a guy by the name of William Kunstler who was a communist and a defense lawyer, used to defend all sorts of ne'er-do-wells back in the 1960s and 1970s. A guy got on a train, a black man by the name of Colin Ferguson, and started gunning people down back in the middle of the 1990s. Well, eventually he fired Kunstler as his lawyer anyway. He was a little bit bats and decided he didn't need a lawyer representing him. But Kunstler's defense was the black rage defense. Oh, my client over here, a person of color, has been treated so poorly all of his life, he just snapped, and therefore he's innocent of the charges. That's what Lefty would like you to believe in all of these cases. There's another story. They've discovered the whereabouts of what became of a teenage girl. She was on vacation in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, about 5-6 years ago. And teenage girl, she walked out the front of her hotel and then eventually disappeared. She got kidnapped by a gang of black drug dealers. They took her to a house where they used her as a sex slave, beating and torturing her the whole time. And then eventually, when she managed to escape, they caught her again. They shot and killed her. Then they chopped her up into pieces and fed her to alligators to get rid of the evidence. A couple of different guys now have corroborated this in their jailhouse confessions. And once again, I don't see mainstream media following that case. But again, that's considered okay because, well, they had to turn to a life of drugs and crime. I don't think so. I think public execution of some of these people would go a long way into probably turning this country around and reminding people that as you're swinging there from the lamppost and your bowels are evacuating as you gasp for breath, that perhaps crime is not the right path to take in your life, and that maybe perhaps being civilized might be the route to go. We've given up on all of these things because it's, well, the electric chair is mean. I don't know. If you give them enough juice all at once, it'll do the job instantly. How about the guillotine? The guillotine, instantly slices the head off, and job done. What pain could there possibly be? So for all of the do-gooders out there who say, well, it's not right to do this, I'm sorry. We have a situation going on in this country where we are fast spinning out of control. And if we don't get a handle on this, I heard yesterday that the homicides in Chicago so far this year are more than New York City and Baltimore combined. And New York City is a much bigger city than the other two combined. And it's run by a mayor, a Democrat who used to work for both the Clintons and Obama. And here you go. He's got a city that is completely unwinding. And it's happening across the country. And people will not stand for the not only the Pledge of Allegiance, but not for the national anthem. And everybody seems to think that we're going to devolve off into 330 separate million countries and somehow be able to govern ourselves. I don't really believe that. 916, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. RT, which I guess stands for Russian television, sometimes, even if it's wrong, but sometimes even a stop clock is right, twice a day, the old saying. RT can come up with, once in a while, a pretty good story. And this is from RT this morning. Satan worship on the rise in America. We told you about this last week, where many of these organizations have gotten into schools with Satan clubs. Now, I don't know that many students are showing up for the after-school satanic meetings, but they've managed to already get their feet in the door and win the argument that they have a right to be there. If you can have evangelicals in the schools, they argue they should have Satan in the schools as well. One of the group's objectives, the writer says, is to embed Lucifer in the public school system by establishing afternoon clubs, adoringly dubbed After School Satan, which isn't the response to the Supreme Court ruling allowing evangelical programs to operate in schools. Currently, 9 clubs are listed under the program. Do you realize they've got one in Salt Lake City? I just, which is the center of one of the world's fastest growing religions. And yet you've got a Satan club operating there. How is this happening? Why are we allowing it to happen? I brought this up last week on the air. I don't know how you get a handle on this. And I've come to believe if we end up seeing our cities burned constantly and we end up having more and more of these heinous crimes and people failing to respect what this country is all about and not allowing people to fly American flags at high school football games, that was what I mentioned in the first hour. That's a true story. Then we're going to have to likely to restore order at some point, have some sort of a draconian response, whether people like it or not, because we can't let it devolve into anarchy and then just people roaming the streets, a la Sodom and Gomorrah, doing whatever they please, harming people in whatever way they please. It's not going to work. We cannot survive with that type of lawlessness, especially without a cohesiveness. And this country no longer has that. Back in World War II, all of those guys came out of the Depression. They could have been well within, I guess, at least their thought process to say, after what we've just been through, why do you think we're going to go save this country? You know what they did instead, though? They said, we love this country. Yes, it's been tough the last decade, but we're going to go off and we're going to take care of the totalitarian regimes and make the world a safer place. And they did that, and they came home, and it didn't matter what background they were from. They did it cohesively because they were Americans. They weren't Italian Americans. They weren't African Americans. They weren't Irish Americans. They weren't Jewish Americans. They were simply Americans, and they all wanted to be Americans. More than anything else in the world, they wanted to be Americans and live up to our ideals and our traditions. Today, we're all back to self-segregation. Colleges are now rooming people in separate segregated dorms. In high school cafeterias, various students' ethnic backgrounds demand to sit alone together. This is a serious problem for the future if this continues. Your choices are to stop it benevolently now, or in 5 years, you're going to have to put it down violently. 20 minutes after 9 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story. And people say, well, did you hear what he wanted to do today? No, I'm not endorsing anything. I am just telling you what will come to pass. It's 62. We've got more on the way. Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. That means you can listen to us online anywhere, all over the world.